The heading in the ESV translation above that section of the Gospel just read to us reads, "What defiles a person?" Not a very appropriate text for a graduation, wouldn't you say? Isn't this a celebration day? Well, if we have something to celebrate today, here is a text to give us the reason. How can you celebrate and make no mention of the reason? You raise a glass and make a toast at a wedding, say, and it's always some uncertain expression of hope. Has nothing been done on this day? Must it be yet another wish for the future? How about a toast that doesn't begin with the word may, but begins with the word because? Couldn't we make a toast today that starts with the word because? Because we have helped these people now leaving here not to defile themselves. That's a reason to celebrate. Sorry if that doesn't sound very nice. Yes, defile themselves. It sounds like something else. But don't blame me. It was Jesus who brought that up. In a state of annoyance, I think, look, he said to the disciples, do I really have to spell it out for you? Are you also still without understanding? He says to Peter, do you not see that whatever goes into the mouth, etc.? But Jesus doesn't care very much about that other defiling or befouling. The physical befouling is easily fixed. A hose and a bathtub, and it's done. As an alumnus said to me the other day, he has a toddler. It's done. It's gone. It's clean. It's kissable. I have a toddler too. There's not even a stain. That is a word that St. Augustine liked to use. Use for what? For the mark of sin, the enduring stain. Augustine takes this language from the Scriptures. For instance, the words of Jeremiah. Though you wash yourself with lye and use much soap, the stain of your guilt is still before me, declares the Lord God. Now don't think here about original sin as inherited guilt or about feeling guilty. Guilt is not a feeling, or you would be not guilty if you didn't feel guilty. Guilt is spreading evil and foulness in freely chosen acts. We live in this guilt. I know you're wondering if I'm off my rocker, but I tell you, it would be good, it would do us good today to think about the cause for our celebration and not just celebrate vaguely. What is there to celebrate? What is truly foul, Jesus says, is what comes up out of the heart. That is a dank and polluted place. What comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and this defiles a person, Jesus says. And what, more than anything else, to quote Jesus, comes out of the mouth? What? It is things said. Words are the progeny of the soul, said Clement of Alexandria. And this produce needs purification. To educate is to clean out this well. We have cause to celebrate in that we, at least here at this minuscule, unknown college, have tried to educate. For 8 months we have labored, the faculty and the students, to purify the well, to clean this well in each of us, from which other people are going to drink. I mean, that's why everybody draws from this well of their hearts, draws out deep draughts of words that they then pour forth so others can drink them in. I'm forcing this on you now. God help me if I'm spreading filth. We say so much every day, so much of what? Do we ever ask, what is in the pails that we are emptying in public on others? Jesus spoke of filth. But you know that we're called to be salt and light. St. John Chrysostom said, if we are light and leaven and luminaries and salt, we ought to enlighten, not to darken, to bind, not to loosen, to draw to ourselves the unbelievers, not to drive them away. Why then do you put to flight those whom you ought to draw to you? What do we have to offer, given that we are offering every time we open our mouths, talking about everything under the sun? But if we did ask ourselves, what is in these pails we keep filling and emptying, how would we begin to answer that question? If someone were to tell us, be sure that what you're pouring out is pure, what would we do? We would probably say, okay, not realizing, not even stopping to think that we don't have a clue as to what ensuring would entail. Or on the other hand, maybe we would have an idea as to how to make this test. As Nietzsche said, your idea of how to purify the well is coming straight up out of that well. So how could you trust it? What kind of testing are you talking about? He had a point. His next point, unfortunately, was, so testing is meaningless. I disagree. What is truly foul is what comes up from out of the heart. I don't know if you accept that claim of Jesus. You might think I'm somehow twisting his words. The thing I'm about to say is that untold evil spurts from the mouths of people, Christian people, every day, so that purification is quite essential. You might judge a remark like that far too dark a view of human beings, and Christians especially, and that is okay. You can simply dial up the brightness, turn the dial, and put back all the treble that you think belongs there to get the sound that you call natural to a human. It's not going to make much of a difference, because all you will wind up with is human beings who say what is true some of the time. Human beings whose words are good words some of the time. That's not much comfort when we have so much to say. We talk all day long, if not to others, to ourselves. One of the reasons I talk so little is that I listen to myself when I talk. Unfortunately, at this college, I talk a great deal. Sadly, no one here talks more. That is why I work out carefully what I have to say in lectures, and why at this time of the year, even having done that, I feel the heavy weight of all that talk. The heart, unpurified, is a foul source, and though it may not drive people away from you, it drives them away from God, from the truth. I call saying what is not true because we haven't bothered to be correct, or saying what is not true because collectively, as a people, we have not maintained any institutions that would cultivate habits that would equip us to speak the truth. I call this evil. The Bible has only the two categories, good and evil, on the path or off the path, with Jesus or against him. I'm not embarrassed at this so-called crude narrowness in Hebraic thought. All the wise cultures had the same limited options. It's only the clever, later cultures that come up with all that nuanced language of well-intentioned error and forgivable foibles and only human inevitability, all this compassionate mercy. And what does this modern compassion do? It tells you, don't worry about this well, your heart. Why even think about it? I'm all for compassion, but when so-called love for me turns into encouragement to ignore the pollution, to keep on drawing from this foul source as I laugh at life's foibles, it seems to me a filthy parody of compassion. I can smell where it comes from. So here's the trouble that we need help with. And there is no help that I can give myself. When we speak, there are only two options. What wells up from our hearts and latches onto words on the way out to help it leap from us to others is going to be either refreshing or foul. If we are going to talk about any of the following things, that means that we are going to pour something down the throats of our brothers and sisters. All right, it's going in their ears. But is that any better? Don't we need to get the picture here? We're going to urge something on them that will either awaken them to the truth, that is a pure and refreshing drink, or give them, as if it were the truth, as if it were the truth. And have you noticed this rather astonishing fact, that when a human being makes a statement about anything, he or she speaks from on high. Nobody prefaces something he wants to tell you with the words, I don't believe this, but I want you to know. Nobody begins a sentence, this is probably false because I am a finite human being with limited knowledge. But everybody speaks, as I'm doing now, as if his words were the truth. If from now on we opened every statement we made with the words, the truth is, we would add nothing to what we are already thinking. When God gave us the power to speak words, he invited us into this business that is his. But oh, how badly it has gone. We are going to urge on people either the truth or something as if it were the truth that isn't. We cannot open our mouths without delivering either something pure or something foul. If you want to say, but there's only a little bit of spit in it, okay, fine, I think I know just how much spit you want in any drink you are given. We are pressing a drink on someone that is either good or foul. And notice that this is an image from the Passions. The Gospels tell us that a stinking drink, no drink anyone would want who knew what it was pressed onto the lips of Christ. We will hand people either a cup of cold water, such as Jesus spoke of, or hand them that other cup Jesus spoke of. You clean the outside of the cup, he said, but inside it is full of filth. We do this if we're going to talk about what? Any of the following. Other people, Christians, unbelievers, parents, friends, enemies, fakes, phonies, saints, the world, gays, criminals, animals, the poor, young people, the rich, something we read, something we heard, Catholics, Protestants, right and wrong, life, movies, politics, books, writers, music, things that are great and awesome, things that are boring, the church, what the church needs, righteousness, religion, Jews, philosophy, wisdom, knowledge, history, nature, what Jesus said, virtue, verses of Scripture, something we can't wait to do, trips planned, work, school, security, spirituality, sex, relationships, what's impractical, what didn't work for us, what's too idealistic, what isn't idealistic and lofty enough, love, and anything that follows the word obviously. Open your mouth and weep at what you hear come out of it. Open your mouth at the age of 1, as my little man does, to say knee and mama, and all is well. He's just learning to use the words, but he isn't yet using them to state anything. But let him get to an age when he can talk about all this stuff. And I will be weeping because I am at that age and I can hear myself. It's not innocent how we talk, because whether we understand it or not, maybe we can't wait for this to happen. It pleases us maybe to have people walk away from us thinking, he is so wise. What we say is going to have an influence on the people we are talking to. It's going in. And first of all, it can make them sick if they believe some foul mistake. And it's not innocent because, second, we're just passing it out with abandon. All these things we say. It's as if, picture this, we're all dragging ourselves through Sinai behind Moses and have gone 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. And then we arrive at a pool in a place called Marah. And I just pass out the water to all of you. But it is bad water, as anyone could have wondered. But did I bother to think about that? No, I'm just passing it out. I am your benefactor. Take, drink, water. We've been dying for water, and I'm sure we have some. The evil here is not just that I will make you sick, but that I do not even think of examining what I'm passing out. Don't test it. Don't even know what testing what I am saying would involve. What would be reason to celebrate? That the innocent babes, and it was no time ago that you students here in the front were saying your first word. It was yesterday. Would have some pill dropped into them now that they're well past innocence that would purify their hearts and stop them from defiling themselves. Because as Socrates saw, as Jesus said, as Genesis reports, no one else can defile you. This you do to yourself. But by what you freely choose to say, by the line of thought you choose to take on Christianity, relationships, justice, no one is making you think this way. What would be cause for utter joy is that this dozen people, every one of whom has a heart of the very type that ruled Adam and Eve, came to the clinic and took their pills, submitted to the therapy, used the time to cleanse themselves and build up strength, and then left and did not relapse and used their newfound powers to stay clean. That would be stupendous. But it is enough that we have come together here in this program, the faculty offering instruction in what it is right and wrong to say, and these students sticking with it. We were all patients, trying to act for a while like proper human beings. That is cause enough for real celebration. And this lot of students has come out, on the whole, quite receptive to this treatment. But let me finish these remarks by answering 5 questions that people could ask about that treatment, what this college is, and what these students have been doing here, which is a bit of a mystery to some. I want to try to dispel the mystery, and I would like to do it by quoting some remarks from these students' exams and papers, along with words from the Scripture, the Church Fathers, the old philosophers. You will see how they fit together. In fact, my whole address today is really an attempt to answer these 5 questions, the first of which I have just answered. Question 1. Why do you people at this college think what you are doing here is so important? Why do you urge this college on students? Why don't you just raise it as an option? What makes you think this is a better option than a real university? Does everything have to be a contest, better and worse? This college accepts the task of education, which is purification. That's all. We need to change how we speak. Is purification an option? Try to find it at a real university where the professors will mock this idea of pollution and evil, laugh at it. They will treat anything you are doing there, learning a language, playing the piano, studying international affairs, boosting your marketability, the dollar value of an hour of your labor, as more vital to your life than this. Does everything have to be a contest? Well, given that men rebelled against God, I suppose so. But I guess we could all just go along with it and rebel en masse to make everyone happy. But then on second thought, no. We just have to resist the resistors. It's better if we resist. It's important that we hear the call that defilement is not good. And is it all really equal? Do you really think that studying something you like, art, languages, medicine even, can compare to what I've been talking about? Do you really think that what a university can give you toward getting a job is equal to this? I quote the French philosopher Antoine Arnaud, a friend of Pascal. There are, in relation to almost everything, different roots, the one true, the other false, and it is reason which must choose between them. Those who choose well are they who have minds well regulated, and those who choose ill are they who have minds ill regulated. And this is the first and most important difference which we find between the qualities of men's minds. I think I know what I want to be in life. I don't think I want to miss the boat on this. I think I want this just as soon as I can have it. Call it reason, like Arnaud, or call it the heart, like Jesus. We're talking about cleansing the image of God within us so that we would know how to live. I do not understand those parents who think that they are helping their children by letting them choose whether to be the person Arnaud describes or a computer programmer, a flute player, or a doctor. To hide one's talent in the earth, says St. Gregory, explaining a parable of Jesus, is to occupy the intelligence God gives us in purely earthly matters, never to lift our heart above worldly considerations. I do not understand those parents who would never think to insist that the education they are paying for has to include the care of their child's soul, which is what education is for, St. Augustine said. Or take St. John Chrysostom, who said, "This ultimately is the purpose of time, to enable us to evolve, to purify ourselves through change, like a sword honed in a refiner's fire, to make us fit for the life to come." But no, says Dad, it's perfectly all right if the boy devotes his years of study to maintaining his body with a well-paying job, or to the maintenance of enjoyment via his love of music, sports, history, and other perishable things. En route to question 2, let me start with a quotation. God does not simply wish that we would live in a certain way. We must live in a certain way, and that way is the only life there is. Which church father do you think said that? That was written by one of this year's students. And this is a student who did not come here with that idea already in place, I can promise you. In case you missed it, here it is again. God does not simply wish that we would live in a certain way. We must live in a certain way, and that way is the only life there is. What must every student do at this time of his or her life? Live. And believe me, he or she wants to live and never stops trying. But there is, I quote, a certain way laid out for him and her. It is a specific way. He who does good, says a 20th century Serbian bishop, is like a tree that bears good fruit for its owner. A tree lives in a specific manner, and in accordance with time, in different seasons, it puts forth buds, then grows leaves, then the blossoms and the fruit, and the seeds of its fallen fruit, which have fed the birds, sink into the ground, and new trees grow. But none of that is done by thinking. Thinking does not get in the way, because there is none. A human being, on the other hand, a human act, said Aquinas, is an act involving free choice. A human being does not live in a specific way. Why? Because what he does is governed by thinking. Human beings live as directed by the way they think. If they think they will be happy and fulfilled by doing such and such, that is what they will do. Unlike the tree, a human being will refuse to reproduce. And if they do it by accident, they might fix that by killing their own offspring. And they can think up a rationale that makes this even honorable, and the people who carry it out, heroes. The tree was a piece of nature. Is this nature? Nature is the enemy, a thing that foists itself upon us without our consent. A human being has a better plan. Any parent who thinks they know what their children believe because of how they were raised is mistaken. The mind can think for itself. The dinner table and the church are not the source of all the beliefs that move your daughter or your son. There is a very good chance that a Christian with the best moral upbringing to be had will not take naturally to baptism into Christ's death, the complete mortification of self-will, because that does not sound good to the human heart, and truly it does not. It sounds very bad. Rest assured that your child has, to quote Chrysostom again, a sympathy with present things. All these thoughts, the killing, the rationalization, the embrace of this world, they all come from the same well. Human beings don't live in a specific way. They live just as they choose, based on what they believe. But God doesn't simply wish that we would live a certain way. There is only one way to live, and the human heart is disinclined. The heart does not get what Chrysostom means when he says a kind of chain it is, this sympathy with present things. Yet these students who have come here have showed many indications that they hear Chrysostom, because we have been talking about this since September. So in light of this vision of life, here is question 2 and my answer to it. Who are you to decide what a human being is? Who are you to think that what you do at your college is to form human beings? We have not decided what a human being is. God decided, if that is the right word. And he called a people to him who would trust his way because it was his. Just what we at this college have not done is to decide what a human being is and then foist this view on others. Any man who talks about what it means to be a human being outside the inherited understanding of that people whom God called to himself. In other words, any man who does this without footnotes must think he's some kind of prophetic voice, another unexamined bucket from that well. There is something to study before you could talk about what it means to be human or to live. To think that we could each work out what we are supposed to become along the way, whereas to become a businessman, we would have to put in a good 5 years study toward an MBA. Shows a reversal of priorities that is simply beyond belief. Do we not know, as Christians, that the prince of this world has filled this world with lies, and yet we will make our own way in living perfectly well on our own? Whereas to get through the thicket of mutual funds, that is going to take, quote, intensive learning experiences. From a well-known business school. When we're talking about the formation of a human being, we're talking about the heart, that thing that is governing the entire life of every human being we care about. Now, question 3. Isn't a college that sees its business as the formation of human beings suffering from delusions of grandeur? Well, I would like to ask the people who ask this question which term they object to, delusions or grandeur. Are they saying, in fact, that today you just don't go looking for certain things, grandeur after all? So is grandeur no longer on offer in this world? In education, if you worship the one true God, the maker of all that was made, and are too jaded to think that learning is a doorway to a vision of the glory of God in his world, where the order of the universe begins to show through as a visible image of God in his own creation, where the human form actually brought to life in the man Jesus becomes actually visible to us in details that we can discuss and communicate, not just hint at vaguely in the manner of children? What is it that stops you from believing in this? To think that to educate is just this, not more. To know is that, to purify is the other, to do the will of God is something else. What disenchanted world are you living in? It is not the world of a God calling you to himself. Could it be that to do the will of God is to change the way you think so that you would know what the will of God was? That is not my idea, but the literal suggestion of St. Paul himself. We hear the first bit of what he says and think we have got it, but it is the second part that is his focus. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. To discern what is good is a matter of knowledge. And those parents who suppose their child has all the guidance St. Paul called for, in that she is a Christian and a churchgoer, does not understand that the mind is full of material that the dinner table and the sermon cannot get to the bottom of. To be a Christian who cares about the will of God in a real sense is to hear St. Paul and make a serious effort to put all these ideas to the test, which is frankly impossible one by one, idea by idea. You have to know the categories, human acts, the passions, purpose, good, evil, justice, prudence, fallacies, ends, means, essential, non-essential. You can grab hold of a great many bad ideas by these handles and then haul them up for scrutiny. And you can overhaul a person in this way. The famous business school I mentioned offered, quote, transformational experiences. What a joke. A transformational experience takes you by the soul and shakes it. When in the last year of grad school, I finally encountered Aristotle, who talked about some of the categories I just mentioned, means, ends, purpose, etc., I realized that my life was upside down. And before too long, I was in the church. But you can be in the church with your life still upside down. This light-filled thinking is the thinking of the church, God's vision for human life. Is this nonsense? Delusions of grandeur? Let me read another remark from a student this year. It is one thing to think somewhat superficially that God's universe has order and laws. But it is different to actually stand in relation to and to understand that order. When I came to this college, I knew the words virtue, goodness, justice, and reason. But when I began to learn the meaning of these ideas and conceptions, actually for the first time, I was able to examine a very deep level of reality. Suddenly, I could behold a world with a depth and meaning unlike anything I had known before. That student is describing an encounter with God's vision of human life. And let me add this rather stunning remark, again from a student. The unexamined life, and what is that? That is the life we live without inquiring into the meaning of those things listed by St. Paul, what is good, acceptable, perfect, and the topics examined by Aristotle, Augustine, Aquinas, Pascal, friendship, love, evil, fun. The unexamined life, the life lived in the mode of presumption. And I have a pretty good handle on what these are, off to business school, which Augustine called the display of a fatal sense of self-sufficiency. This student wrote, "The unexamined life is actually life according to man. What is examined when we study it in the proper way is brought into the light of Christ. Amazing and true. I will permit myself only 2 questions more. Question 4, what about the country grandmother? There are godly people who didn't come to no college. They didn't examine life, pick up a lot of ideas. They didn't study the meaning of any concepts. True enough, God has spared some people some of this work. And don't forget to ask how. God spared them by giving them a simpler life that they, like the Virgin Mary, humbly accepted without thinking about whether they could stand it or whether that life out in the country was for them or whether their specific gifting would find a proper outlet so that they could truly do God's will, etc., etc. If the country grandmother doesn't need this college, neither do I, some people will say. But you do, because her life is not your life. You young sophisticates are up to your eyeballs in this culture, as this grandmother was not. A big part of her blessing was the limitation of her options, the very thing that today's person calls the end of my life. Nothing would send many young Christians into a tailspin faster than that message from Gabriel. Forget the music degree, the MBA, you're going to have a child in difficult circumstances. Very likely today's 20-year-old will wind up at a university or a community college among the privileged of this world with everything on offer at his fingertips. You will have a lot to deal with, and you need to have an uncluttered head because that world has its eye on all of you, body and soul. And finally, I said earlier that the thinking of the church is something you cannot reinvent for yourself. A Bible and a prayer will not deliver it because God's plan is the church, a community, not autonomy. But if I say there is no help here that I can give myself, some Christians are likely to respond, yes, only God gives it, and He will. He will give you all you need in living. Implication, this college is offering what God is going to give you anyway. But that was not my point. My point was don't wait for God to do it. He is saying, go and get the help. So here's my final question and my closing response. Question 5. What makes you think that you college people can purify a soul? That is, remake man in God's image, when only God forms human beings. This is practically blasphemy. A fair question, but a question that comes right from the heart, in the good sense and the bad, and displays the character of so much of the trouble in the history of Christianity. It is presumptuous, and to presume, according to the dictionary, is to take what isn't yours, to snatch a conclusion without paying for it, by thinking. Here are the words of another student from this year who wrote, I came to Augustine College thinking it was all well and good that people use their intellects well. But I was not fully interested nor convinced that I needed to do this. Now I realize that a refusal to use my mind well is a refusal to glorify God. It is a refusal to be human. I am more readily willing to give my entire life over to God and to worship Him with all of my being. This student came to realize that if you don't think clearly now about some of the things I've mentioned, say about what God is doing in the world, you just can't glorify Him for doing it, and came to a conclusion. I am beginning to learn what it truly means to love the Lord my God with all my heart and all my soul and all my mind and all my strength. If you don't think clearly about what God is doing in the world, you can overlook God and also turn against your brother, one Christian against another, the way Caiaphas turned against Christ, rending his robes at Jesus' blasphemy. And the horror begins. In back of this third question is a presumption that seems to me totally not self-evident. So where is it coming from? Straight from the heart of man. Is it reasonable to presume that the people who truly honor God are the people who assign all great doings to Him alone, with no place given to human action? God forms man, God purifies hearts, it is only God and nothing but God. Well, that sounds good only if you feel what it is saying. But unfortunately, as food is abused if all you do is stare at it, so are words abused if all you do is react to them. We live in a day that is at war with your nature. Everything is fodder for the burning flames of feeling. I like this quote. I dislike this quote. When you see that on a web page, for heaven's sake, don't touch that mouse. Stop all this liking and disliking and think. What is the answer to this question? Examine the way you are thinking. Think about what is presumed by the view that only God acts to do good. Didn't God come to save mankind by taking the form of a human being who, in the human actions of a man, serving, trusting, unto death, and even dying, meant to show men what to do and how to think? And then when Jesus left, He sent us the Spirit, which gave us what? Power, which is energy by which to do something. This was God's idea, that power from Him would enter a man and be used in acts that purified him. The Spirit was given to be used in the work of a human being because that is the only way to become one. Our work as beings with minds is to think properly and speak good words. God asks man to figure things out, pick up on his initiatives, do things. Take that story about water in Sinai. And he cried to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a log, and he threw it into the water. Who is the he here? He threw it into the water. Not God, but Moses. And the water became sweet. We are supposed to play ball with God, to use our limbs and powers in answer to Him. Someone called this dancing with God. God leads, and the church accepts His lead and moves in accordance, not with any thought that its actions are what purifies or its actions are what forms a man, but that its actions are part of the dance that God has initiated to renew all things. And without the human steps and turns that match the divine ones, there will be no dance, no formation, no purification, no nothing. Now back to celebration. My last quotation is from Father Alexander Schmemann, the dean of a seminary, a learned man, who said, "One does not celebrate ideas." Why? There is nothing to ideas but the life they restore. And the life they restore, if it is life and not some twisted parody of life, is participation with God. The ideas of any thinker who spoke about life and spoke truly, who cares if he was a pagan, if he spoke truly about the world created by its only maker, these ideas are dead artifacts if you don't use them to purify the source within you, which is the thing that is keeping you from participation and life. And these ideas are less than dead artifacts if you forget them. So today I am not celebrating the future or the perfection of another crop of students going out from here. I'm not celebrating what we have produced, young leaders, change agents equipped with strategic ideas for a renewed North America, a kind of talk that makes me shudder, because that is not what we have done. I am celebrating and want you to celebrate with us, the parents and grandparents and siblings and alumni and benefactors who have supported what I have attempted to describe. I am celebrating what we have done. Time spent in eternity. We have drunk at the well together, the well of thought that the church honors and protects against the ravages of the enemy, who is picking off Christians. Because we have done that, let us celebrate. And it was done faithfully. This was a very impressive class. And I'm not talking about just the top few. In the tireless effort of these students to keep learning, keep listening, keep thinking, there were joys for me this year in the midst of our discussion of a painting or a philosopher. Sometimes the beauty of God's order shone out to me, and it was made that much more beautiful when I could see that I was not alone in seeing it. I had companions, a third of my age, standing beside me who I knew could see it too. And because this day is another end, we are out of eternity and the future is once again leaning on us. So there is no escaping the usual prayer, which is not celebration, but hope mingled with fear. To this group I say, may you not fall back after leaving here, back on the skids and into the illusion. May you not forget everything that you have learned. May you be deaf to the siren song of the world, or anyway, much deafer than you used to be. May you bridle your thoughts and your tongue always, or at least increasingly, and not only be forgiven your sins, but may you simply not defile yourselves unrepentantly and be more light and leaven than ever. In Jesus' name, amen.